Hello, everybody. How's it going? Welcome back to the History of Video Games. My name is Wes, and I'm here, as always, with Ben. How you doing today, Ben?
I'm doing good. How you been, Wes?
I'm doing pretty darn good. Chilly weather, but I mean, when you stay inside and you got games to play, it's a good life.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, we had a pretty big snowfall.
We did, yeah. Up here on the East Coast, other parts of the country, I don't think really experienced it much in it, but we got like 8 inches where I was. That's a lot. It's for some people.
Yeah, for sure.
But do you want to get us started off today with what you've been playing recently?
Oh yeah. So I think I want to talk about my Star Wars game again, even though that's all I've been talking about. But some weird stuff has been happening. The main thing I want to just tell you is the light side, dark side thing. I finally got to experience that because for a while I didn't really know how it worked and I wasn't getting any of the powers. But after a certain level, you can start to pick powers from the light side or the dark side from the two talent trees, and depending on how much you go in one or the other, that's when your like scale would move. So I guess
Okay.
that determines if you're light or dark. But then there was a certain point in the game where you had to like pick, you had to lock it in, or maybe you didn't even have a choice. It was like whatever you had more of, it then went fully to that side. You know
Oh,
what I
weird.
mean?
Yeah.
So it kind of branches out at that point. So there's two different endings, I guess. But I ended up being on the light side because there's like a heal over there, and healing's always really good. So I had that, but then I was interested to know what the dark side, what happened in the story with that. So the part when it kind of chooses for you, it's basically like the bad guy is there with your friend who's been with you through the whole game and was in the first game. And I think you just like slain a Jedi, like in a previous level. And he was like, "Oh, good, now take the life of your friend and join the dark side." And
Oh,
so for
man.
my guy, he was like, "No," and then he, ran away or something. And now I have to go rescue her. But I looked at the dark side ending, and it's literally like, okay, and he just kills his friend. I was like, oh my god. I wasn't expecting it to be that brutal. I don't know what I was expecting, but I was definitely
That
not
seems
expecting.
kind of intense. Yeah. For like an old game, they're just like, yeah, all right, fine, I'll do it.
This like major character in the lore. It's just like they're gone. And then I guess he runs away anyway. So I think the levels might change a little bit depending on which side you picked, but for the most part, it's still the same general thing. So you run away for both of them, but I was just like, oh my gosh, like, and this is the fully acted movies, that I'm watching.
Oh, that's right.
Where he just like slices her head off. And I was like, oh god, that happened. So I'm kind of glad I picked the the light side, I guess. But I'm still a couple levels away from the end, I think. But I'm getting towards the end. I'm definitely chasing the main bad guy now. So hopefully I'll get there between now and next time, and I can talk about how the game is going to end. But
Yeah.
it's been fun so far. I've been enjoying it. It's hard at times and just kind of a fun playthrough at times. The levels are a little bit more lame than the first game. I think the first game was kind of really out there in terms of its
That's right.
levels. But
You said this one takes place inside a lot of the time, right?
yeah, it's a lot of inside, and it's a lot of like somehow the levels are a lot less memorable. I think part of that actually might be in the first level or in the first game, whenever you did your mission, like then you had to go back to the ship, right? And sometimes you had to fight people to go back to the ship, but sometimes you could just run through the level because everyone was dead and you got back to the ship. Whereas in this game, going back to the ship is like a second level. So you see like all the locations in the game like at least twice because you're like running from the same area. So
Right.
there's a little bit less diversity there, but
Hmm.
all in all, it's okay. I'm having fun with it. I want to finish it for
Nice.
sure. So
And that's Dark Forces 2, right?
yeah, hopefully my I'll have some use for my other like good guy force powers, but who knows? They seem a little lame. It was mainly just the healing.
I feel like that's always the breakdown in games when you got a light side, dark side, or an equivalent scale. It's like
Yeah,
in a lot of early games at least, it's just like you're either nice or just like a monstrosity. And then you either get like lame powers for the nice guy or these like really cool powers for the, I don't know. Those choices always crack me up though, because I could never, for whatever reason, could never pick the renegade path in the Mass Effect games. Because it
Oh
was,
yeah.
I like it when there's like a little bit of like, you're being mean, but there's reason to it. Sometimes it felt like Shepard was just being like a jerk. You know, like he'd like kick a kid, and then you're like, yeah, renegade points. It's like, what?
Right. Yeah, with this one it seems to me mainly just a talent tree thing. And I
Gotcha.
guess there's some consequences to the story.
Right.
But you don't make the decisions of that part, I guess. But yeah, that's what I've been doing. What have you been up to?
Well, I wanted to talk about a game that I've been playing with my friends once a week recently called Satisfactory. Emphasis on factory because it's a building game and it's all about like automation and basically building a gigantic autonomous factory. So you start out just like landing on this random alien planet. And it's a little weird because it's basically just like, hey, go exploit this planet for all its resources and kill any hostile life, which is just like all these animals that have probably been living here for centuries. But that's not the point. It's about factory building, not about like conservation of nature. But it's really good. It's weird because I feel like a lot of the crafting type games sort of stemming from Minecraft made use of the fact that a bunch of games in that genre didn't have good graphics, and they're like pixel graphics are sort of charming for this type of game. But
Mm-hmm.
Satisfactory, for whatever reason, is just like, I think, straight up Unreal Engine and like really high fidelity, which is awesome and kind of differentiates it because you got all these like conveyor belts and mining machines and constructors that are making a bunch of different resource types. And when it makes copper wire, there's just like this giant spool of pretty in depth looking copper wire going across the conveyor belt. So it's totally different from what I was expecting from a crafting game, but it is really nice. And I just found out the other day when we were playing it that the map is much bigger than we thought it was. One of the neatest things you can do is instead of just putting conveyor belts all over the place to transport materials, you can also have trucks that you drive and record the path that you take as you drive them so that they automatically take the path once you get out.
That's cool.
Yeah, so you have like these automated delivery routes going from truck station to truck station to deliver supplies. So it's really, really good. It's still in early access. They have said when you start playing a multiplayer game that finishing the single player is their main priority. So there's more bugs in the multiplayer, but honestly, it's been a pretty smooth experience so far. But I don't think it scales at all for single player and multiplayer, and it is so incredibly grindy, like a lot of these games are, because you sort of like hand in resources to progress to the next technology tier to unlock faster conveyor belts, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't, if it doesn't scale for multiplayer, and this is just like the amount of resources that you would need for single player, that is a lot of time spent. And maybe I'm getting slightly older, but I'm like, I don't think I could do this single player. It'd just be building efficient machines so I can get new materials to have to rebuild them to make it efficient again,
Right.
which is fun to an extent, but I think it's much too grindy for single player. Not having played the single player, I guess it's not too fair to say that, but it seems like it is.
Yeah.
But other than that, I mean, it's really cool. You have not many weapons because it's mainly a building game, but there are like creepy spider things and these like fire shooting dogs that attack you that you can take out and harvest. Sounds gruesome, but you can use their what you get from them for fuel basically for your factory. But yeah, it seems really fleshed out. It's been out for a while in early access, but it was Epic Game Store for a while and it just now came over to Steam, I think like a couple months
Okay.
ago.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely worth checking out. Probably won't do single player until it's all the way released, if at all. But it's a pretty fun one. Just the scale of the factories you can build and the automation is fun to look back at and be like, oh, I was making that by hand, and now I'm making 500 of them a second, so I can make this more complex resource and eventually make like computer chips or something. So it has a good sense of scale in that way.
Nice.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I've been doing recently.
That sounds fun. I've been itching for a game like that. I've been wanting to play Minecraft, but my account got stolen, and the customer service is that there is none.
Oh no. You got to reach out to a Jeb or Notch in person.
Right. I'm probably just gonna end up having to buy it again. But whatever.
Yeah, I was watching somebody stream, and it's somebody who like probably never plays Minecraft because the chat was making a big deal out of like, oh my god, he's finally playing Minecraft, and there's like versions of it on the Microsoft Store that cost $60. I'm
That's
like, what do
crazy.
you?
I think I bought it for like $20.
Yeah, when Mojang just sold it straight up, I think it was $20, and I had it for free for a while, quote unquote, had it, but I did eventually end up paying for it, and just the for some reason seeing a $60 copy of Minecraft, I'm like, something seems wrong about that.
Yeah.
It's a really good game, and they deserve to make money for it. But they've also made lots of money off of it.
Yeah. For sure. All right. Well, nice. Well, I think maybe we should move into our special topic, Wes. What do you think?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So today we're going to be talking about the first Atari 2600 games of the year of 1978. And so because of that, I thought, hey, maybe we should check in on Atari. It's been a little while. We've talked about Atari before, and we talk about them pretty often because they're really important and make a lot of great games. But there's some pretty important things that happened in 1978 that I just wanted everybody to be aware of. So going back, a quick like summarization of where we've been. Founded in 72. The main guys are Bushnell and Al Alcorn. Nolan Bushnell was kind of like the head CEO business guy. And in 76, Atari was sold to Warner Communications. That's going to be like, I think, the sticking point to a lot of things that happen now in 78. But there's a couple of things that come out of that Warner Communications deal. One of them is that they had to finance the first ever Pizza Time Theater, which was Nolan Bushnell's like dream of basically creating Chuck E. Cheese, which is what it would become. And also from that deal, Atari got all the funding to make the 2600, which has come out now. But so moving forward now into 78, the big things that happen is that Nolan Bushnell is going to leave at the end of the year. And when he leaves, he buys back all the Pizza Time Theater stuff. So that's going to be his main thing. Actually, it was funny. I was reading through this, and apparently, like, part of the Warner Communications deal was like they had to pay for this restaurant, gaming, and animatronic animals store or whatever, or a restaurant. I was like, it's interesting that so early on, like the animatronic animals were a part of it.
Right. Yeah. Like that's really the selling point.
Yeah, he was like that was one of the big three that they needed. But yeah, so he's gonna leave. Or he steps down first, and then he leaves shortly thereafter. The person who replaces him as head of the board of directors is Joe Keenan, and hopefully that name is familiar to you guys. He originally led Key Games and was the head guy there, and then when Key Games and Atari merged, or made public their relationship, he became the president of Atari. But now he's going to get Nolan Bushnell's position as head of the board of directors, which makes sense. I think he's a good person to be there. He's been pretty much successful in everything he's done, I think. So Joe Keenan is going to be the new big guy. And then the other big thing that happens in 78 is that Key Games is going to be disbanded, which I'm not sure why they did that. I don't think it's related to Nolan Bushnell stepping down or anything like that. But maybe they just thought, we want to really push the Atari brand. But the Key Games has been around just about from the beginning and have made so many great games, from Tank to Drag Race to a lot of the racing games, the Grand Track 10 games, the sprint games, stuff like that. So it's kind of sad to see them be disbanded. Obviously, all the people working there are now just working under Atari licensed games. So it's not like we're going to miss the talented people who worked on those games. But yeah, it's sad to see the name go, because it did stick around for a while because it is a very popular name, and has made some great games independent of Atari, but those are the kind of main hitting points, at least in 78, that everyone should kind of know about.
Yeah, and I did want to cover a couple other things that I found along the way that were just sort of interesting tidbits of what was happening with Atari, going a little bit into 1979 as well. From 1977 through 1979, and probably a little bit earlier than that as well, Atari was also releasing pinball cabinets and jukeboxes, which I didn't realize they had jukeboxes as maybe part of their pinball division. The division was eventually shut down in late 1979, but they released some really interesting, like, big themed or like a lot of popular properties as pinball games, one of them being Middle Earth, the pinball game in 1978. So there's a lot of interesting stuff coming out of there. They continued to grow internationally in 1978. They exhibited a bunch of games in both Germany and Canada in that year, and they also started a new Ireland manufacturing branch. And as Ben was saying, in November of 78, Joe Keenan was replaced as CEO and president of Atari by Ray Kassar, who I think was sort of appointed. It might have been somebody at Warner Communications, somebody who Warner wanted to head it instead.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like there's accounts of there being friction between Ray Kassar and everyone else at Atari because they kind of had like free reign, and the way that he made it sound is the engineers were a bit spoiled. So not sure who to believe, but either way, there was sort of a friction in the change of management because, I'm sure things weren't the way that they were before.
Mm-hmm.
And the last thing that I noticed when I was looking through the timeline for these couple years that stood out to me is in 1979, possibly because of the friction, there was a lot of people leaving who had been there for a bit. The name that stuck out to me the most is Joe DeCur, who was one of the lead developers for the Atari VCS 2600. So he'll be leaving in 1979 to do other things. I'm not sure if we'll see him more in the future of video games or not.
Interesting. Yeah, so we'll have to keep an eye out, especially in 79, maybe come back and see who's all leaving. But in the meantime, there's some changes going on, some friction being had. Nolan Bushnell he's loving Chuck E. Cheese idea. He's all for it. But why don't we take a small break and then actually get into some of these 2600 titles?
Oh, yeah.
Hello and welcome back. We're going to hop right into some Atari 2600 titles for you guys today. These ones came out in May of 78, but I do have a bit of a caveat with this. I tried really hard to look up month dates for these games, and eventually I found month dates on a website called randomterran.com. It was the only website that had month dates for these Atari 2600 titles, and luckily for me, the person who made it had sources for everything. And when I was doing my research, I looked through their sources and I was like, yeah, this all makes sense. I like what I'm seeing. But now the problem is that I've gone back to Random Terran in prep for this episode, and he's changed all the dates.
Oh, no.
For whatever reason, he's put all of the games in September for the whole year. And that doesn't make any sense to me. And he's also removed a lot of sources, so I couldn't even go back and double check them. So I don't know what's going on, but I checked them when I made the timeline. So I feel confident in these dates at least, and we're going to stick with them. So we've got two cartridges that apparently came out in May of 78. The first one's called Hangman. I'm sure it was everybody's most wanted game after the launch lineup. But Hangman had apparently 9 games, but it was basically 4 different difficulty levels, one for a 1-player mode and for a 2-player mode. And then there was a last mode where one person could make the word and the other person could guess it, and you go back and forth with that. But I didn't really feel the need to cover that one in depth.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like there's too much interesting going on there, but the second one definitely has a little bit more to talk about, and it's one that I took a in-depth look at because it's Space War. And as we've seen a couple times. Space War doesn't always mean the original Space War, but this one is the original Space War style game in a cartridge for the Atari 2600. It was also called Space Combat for the Sears equivalent console, the Telegame Systems, and it had a super detailed instruction manual. I think I might have not bragged, but been really happy about this when we talked about the previous Atari 2600 games. Part of it, I think, is just that it's a much more popular console, so people have the uploaded PDF versions of all of these manuals. But it's so easy when you can just see the manufacturer say, hey, this is what all these game modes do, instead of us like guessing, looking back at the game.
Yeah.
And it also had in this instruction manual a bunch of exercises for how you could learn to fly the spaceships in the game, which is useful because, as I will get into, the flight is a little difficult in this, kind of hard to do. So the gameplay, it says 17 different games. Of course, this is Atari 2600, so up for debate what you might consider different games. I'm going to phrase them as Space War variations. For all the variations, though, you have ammo for your shots, and it only refuels if there is a star base in the variation that you're playing, or if both players run out of ammo. And the games basically break down into a couple different sections. For games 1 through 7, they're all two-player games where you're playing pretty much typical Space War. Two ships flying around in empty space, shooting at each other to blow the other person up. If the other ship explodes, then the other player gets a point. First player to 10 points, while within a 10-minute time limit, wins. And then so the variations for all of these are, you could have hyperspace enabled, which you pull down on the little joystick controller to make your ship disappear. It becomes invulnerable to the sun that's in the center of the map, but you can't fire, and it uses fuel, which is another meter that you have the whole time that you're in hyperspace. And if you jump without fuel, you'll explode. Or if you run out of fuel while you're in hyperspace, you'll explode. So it's just this fun, extra little sort of movement, tactical thing. A little strange because you go completely invisible, and since you're sharing a screen with your opponent, they wanted to hide it completely, so you have no idea where you are either. So you could probably do it tactically if you just did it in like short stints. Since it also made you invulnerable to the sun, say you were coasting towards it because of the gravity, just turn it on real quick, turn it off, and fly away or something like that. One of the other variations for these modes is boundaries, or warp drive, as they called it. Warp drive is just, instead of there being boundaries around the screen, you loop around the screen. Although I do like that they had an inventive name for it. But basically all these two modes are whether or not your missiles and your ship bounce off the edges or wrap around the screen. And then the final variations are whether there is a space sun, which is how it's called in the manual, basically just a star, a star base, or neither. The space sun is like traditional Space War, where it has a gravitational pull that pulls both ships towards the center slowly when you're near it, and if you get pulled into it, you die. The opponent gets a point. The star base is in the same spot as the space sun, except you just hover over it for a bit, and you refill your ammo and your fuel while you're there. And then the other variation is to just have neither of these. So with all those together, you end up with 7 different variations that they let you play. And then for games 8 through 13, these are actually what I would consider a different game mode. There's 2-player space shuttle games where you have unlimited fuel. You don't shoot at anything, but there's these space modules or space shuttles floating around the screen, which are basically just look like the missiles, but they're sort of flying on their own diagonally across the screen. And you have to point your ship at them, match their speed and direction, and then fly into them to catch them. It's very finicky. Okay. But the variations for this are basically you can play with boundaries on or off, and you can play with the sun on or off for these. For all of them, the space shuttles that you have to catch are matching to the color of your ship, too. And then the final 3 or 4 games 14 through 17, are one-player versions of the space shuttle games. So same variations, but you're just competing against the clock to catch as many of these space modules as you can. So with that explained, how there's 17 different games in this one cartridge, I want to get into my ratings for it, because I don't want to talk about it too much beforehand. The graphics, I gave a 1.5 out of 10. It could be the distance from our last Atari 2600 and the fact that we just looked at the Bally Astrocade and I said, hey, this is like a lot better. And, or at least we knew it was going to be tough for the Atari 2600 games to live up to what that did graphically. And in this game, the graphics really aren't that great. But I think they do have two big positives. The ships are sort of little triangles that have like a needle at the top and a little bit more detailed. And they do have good sprites that look all the way good around as it rotates in 360 degrees. So that's nice, but it's still not a super detailed ship sprite. It's just kind of like this lumpy triangle. The other big graphical benefit that I saw is that it seems to run very smoothly. Like there's not much flickering. Everything is moving across the screen, even when you're going very fast. It's very easy to track with your eye and it looks good. But the negatives, I feel like, are really big too. The background is just flat green. There's no stars or anything, unless you have the sun or base in the middle. But even if you have those, it's just a yellow, like, single pixel in the middle, basically. So there's no detail to the sun or the star base. The scoring also looks pretty nice, but it's a solid bar for your ammo counter instead of segmented. So it's a little bit hard to visualize how much ammo you have left, just because like part of the solid bar disappears and then part of it's left. So if you played it enough, I'm sure you'd know, and it's probably also the same amount of shots every time before you run out of ammo. But I would have liked if it was just like 5 pips instead of this smooth bar. The explosion for when you blow ships up also is not great. It's just the ship sprite spinning around really fast, like Galaga style. So there's no like actual explosion, which I feel like we know that this console could probably do, even if it was just a bunch of pixels flying out. And the missiles that you shoot are also just flying squares, just like 1 pixel squares. I like that the ships are both pink and blue. It's nice colors and it looks okay over the green, although the green background is still a bit of a weird choice. But it's not really just all that impressive graphically. For sounds, I gave it a 1.5 out of 10 here as well. The sounds for this are simple, but I do think they're really good for a console. There's a fire noise and an explosion noise, which are both pretty satisfying and aren't just like pong beeps, and a thruster noise whenever you're actually on the accelerator accelerating. They all sound pretty similar, but I think they are really distinct enough that you know what each one is. And because you're not using your thrusters the whole time when you're playing this game, it's a balance in this one where instead of it being too quiet, I think you're firing enough and people are exploding enough that it's kind of a nice break to have the engine noise not be on the whole time. So I do think the sounds are pretty good for this, but it's just those 3 sounds. And they do sound kind of similar to each other. I don't know. It's tough because they definitely are all distinct enough that you know what each one is, but it's not like anything crazy with like the missile launch sounds or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
And for gameplay, I gave it a 1.5 here as well. The space fight in this game is super fun conceptually, but I don't think it feels that great when you actually play it. Basically, it works like how you would imagine actual space flight works, where there's no resistance, so you keep all of your momentum if you just like hold down the accelerate button in one direction and then let go of it. Whatever max speed you hit, you'll just keep going in that direction. Unless, of course, you bounce because you have the boundaries on, but then you still keep your speed, you just change direction. And the only way that you can change your direction or reduce your thrustiness is by turning your ship around and accelerating in the other direction. You don't have like omnidirectional movement, really. You're always moving where your ship is pointing, unless you kind of just like turn in circles and coast after you've already set a speed. So it makes sense for a space game, sort of. I don't know. It just feels strange because you have to like point your ship right to like move that direction instead of just being able to like move in a smooth curve. It feels like you're always kind of doing like strange angles, and you can get up to such a high speed, but the acceleration is slow enough that if you want to kill your speed, you have to like really sit on it for like a couple seconds going the opposite direction. And it just feels like you can't do any fast maneuvers. You always have to fly pretty slowly if you want to really like loop around your opponent, or else you're just doing what I did, which is just like max speed in one direction with boundaries on and then just bounce all over the screen. Don't even worry about changing your speed, just aim and shoot, which is also kind of fun, but it just felt a little weird. I like what they were going for, but I don't think it came across as super fun to play. It also made it really difficult to catch the space modules, which is like half of the game modes. They're so tiny, and it has to go like right into the center of the front of your ship for you to be able to catch it. And there's one time I flew in it. I thought I was going at a good speed and everything, but it must have been too fast because it went right through the top of my ship, but it didn't even count for a point. So that seemed way too finicky. As far as the game variations go, I do like the different boundary options, the sun and the starbase. I think they all add a decent bit of variation. While I wouldn't say there are 17 different games, I do think there's a lot of distinction between the variations. It's not like too bad like we see with some of the Pong variations. Hyperspace is also neat, but it's just a little weird and hard to use since you're invisible the whole time that you use it. And overall with the gameplay, I think that the fighting games are really cool with all the variations, but the space module and space shuttle games just feel like you're chasing your own tail around in circles, especially in the single player modes where there's like nothing to even compete with except for time. And it's just like dots floating on the screen. And unless you're really good at it, it's just you not being able to catch them. So there's some good stuff to it, but then there's a lot of stuff that just didn't feel like it landed to me.
Feels like it needs like a break. Like, you know?
Yeah. Like it's so hard to just, oh, I want to stop now. I have to turn 180 degrees, point the other direction, and then decide where I want to go next and point that way. It's just a very weird way to control it. So for relevance, I gave it a 7 out of 10. It feels like one of the first pretty faithful original Space War remakes we've seen, especially on console. For better or for worse, it plays really similar to the original game. A lot of the ones that we've seen have just been like variations or just kind of using the name. So I think it's really awesome to see Atari putting about at this game, and it is literally Space War, except you can change a lot of the variables, which is nice. It doesn't really feel like it's relevant in the sense of pushing the boundaries of the 2600, though. I feel like we've seen kind of some more fun gameplay and better visuals with previous games. So overall, I gave it a 1.75 out of 10. I think Space Force is a solid cartridge, and you could get a pretty good amount of entertainment out of it if you had two people fighting each other. But other than that, the other modes just don't feel that fun with the way that the movement is. I do want to say that I played it on a keyboard, so it might have been better if you were using the joystick. But even with the joystick, it wasn't like 360 movement. It was left and right rotates you, forward is your thrust, and then down is hyperspace. So that still feels like it would be a little weird to control.
Mm-hmm.
So overall, it had just a lot of stuff that felt kind of subpar, wasn't blowing me away. But overall, it is a solid game. I would have liked if, they had 9 Space War variations and then 6 other ones that were just a slightly different game, kind of like Combat, because Space Module just felt not fun and too similar for me.
I know we need to get Lunar Lander on there.
Yeah. I mean, they could have, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's Space War. It's a fun one. It's good to see Atari 2600 back, but not the huge, exciting return in 1978 I was looking for.
Yeah. It's weird. I feel like maybe you can say what your thoughts are compared to the Bally Astrocade, but it feels like it's in this weird territory, at least in this particular game, of like better than anything we're going to see on the Fairchild, but like kind of worse than the Astrocade than what we saw last week anyway.
Yeah, like if this is we'll have to see with other things to come, but if this is like the expectation of like what the console can do with games like this, the Astrocade can just do so much more.
Mm-hmm.
But you make a good point. It's also like, these aren't that bad. They're better than other consoles. It's just the
Yeah.
Astrocade is better than this. So it's a weird middle ground. Yeah,
But they're still all right.
they
So
are.
yeah,
Yeah,
we'll have to definitely watch out for them.
absolutely. And then next up for our honorable mention, we have the Video Arcade Rev A and B, which was by Sears, and it was a clone rebranding of the Atari 2600 for the Sears label. As far as I know, they were kind of releasing all these games for both of them too, with Space Combat being the Sears version of this.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and by the way, I found out that the cartridges, since this is all coming out after the launch, they cost $19 a piece at the time, which is approximately $75 today.
Yikes.
So,
and we thought $60 games were bad.
Yeah, maybe like for Space War, okay, but Hangman, come on.
Yeah, it's oof.
Who's paying $75 for that? But let's move on. We're going to move right into some arcade games. The first one here I rated, and man, when I first saw the title of this, I was a little nervous about it. It's called 3D Bowling by Meadows Games, and I was like, okay, it's probably just Meadows Lanes, which you did last time, just updated a little bit, but it's not. It's a brand new game, and it's got some pretty cool stuff going on.
Yeah, really. Ooh.
Yeah, the basics of it are the same. You know, it's a bowling game. You're bowling a ball down the lane, whatever. You can do hook shots. All that's the same. You got the score cards. That's all good. The main differences are really in the visuals. I want to start by talking about the cabinet. The outsides are kind of boring. It's just like mainly a white cabinet with like a little picture of a guy bowling on the side. But there's kind of like I guess it's an overlay, but it doesn't cover up the part of the screen that you play on. So when I talk about the gameplay itself, it's just black and white. But then there's this kind of color overlay around it, which is just a picture of a bunch of wacky characters on either side of the bowling alley or the bowling lane that we're going to be playing the game on, just like hooting and hollering and making a ruckus of it. So it's kind of like, I guess it's meant for two people, and you're probably, the lead championship bowlers or something, and these are all the people watching you play. So that's cool. I really like the little overlay it had. But then for the actual what you're playing on, one of the biggest differences is that this uses perspective, whereas the previous games did not. They were just kind of 2D, and this one, everything kind of merges towards the top center. So we have a perspective thing, and when you bowl the ball, it starts out big and it gets smaller the further it goes down. So that's cool, but the real awesome things are all the animations that this adds, and it adds a lot of animations. So for one thing, the pins fall over. That's kind of what I would expect. But then there can be sometimes when a pin it's a little animation of it like wiggling, like it's about to fall down.
Oh, nice.
I've never seen it go back upright. It always falls down, but it's a nice little touch. And then there is a white box that comes down and I guess cleans up the pins, because all the knocked over pins will go away when it comes back up. So you've got that little animation of it cleaning up the pins, and then the ball returns back to the bowler via the gutter lanes, which isn't how it is in real life, I don't think, but it still works. It still gets the point across. Your guy, like, he has a little animation where he'll go over to the side of the where the gutter lane is, and he's going to go and grab the ball again. And that's cool. It's cool to see the ball come back down. It's really cool to see the little cleaner thing come down and remove all the pins that were there. And then the actual guy himself, there's two, one for both players. And what's crazy to me is that when one player is bowling, the other guy is sitting down in a chair.
Oh, man.
And I love that. It's just a little thing, but it's just cool to see, like, when it's your turn, your guy's going to get up from his little chair, grab the ball from the gutter alley thing, and then, you're off to playing it now. So I just thought that was cool. The guys themselves have a little nice animation of them holding the ball and walking over to the lane, and then when you're ready to bowl, they'll face the lane. One thing that is weird is that when they go and pick up the ball from the gutter, they walk backwards, because I guess they're only facing there's only a sprite of them facing one direction. but it's a minor thing. I love the sitting animation where they actually sit down in the chair. That's cool, and that they're there when the other person's bowling. I love that. And then after, I guess it's your second ball, or maybe your first if you get a strike, your guy will do a little animation as well, depending on how it went. So I think if you get between 0 to 9 points in your two balls, it'll just kind of like, I guess it's him putting his arms around his head, like kind of sad. And if you get a spare, I don't think there's any animation, but if you get a strike, the guy will actually jump and wave his arms.
Oh, nice.
So I loved all this. There's so many like little animation tweaks. The actual bowling is kind of what you would expect for because of the weird perspective. When the guy actually releases the ball, it's way bigger than it was like a second ago in his hands, and then as it goes towards the end, it gets small again. So that's a little strange. And then when it comes through the gutter, it starts small and gets big, like bigger than the actual guy, and then when he picks it up, it's small again. So there's some like little things there, but all the little animations make a really nice touch and help tell the story of what you're doing here, especially with the overlay as well. It's pretty cool. So those are the main improvements and things that were added in the game. So let me go through my ratings. Let's start with graphics. I gave it a 3.25 out of 10. All the animations are awesome. The perspective is awesome. There's so many like little attention to detail things that I feel like we kind of come to expect from Meadows games, even though their last couple of games haven't been the best. I think this is a nice kind of return to what we expect from them. It's kind of weird, but all the little things that they added were so nice. The things I love the most are the characters sitting down watching when the other person's not playing, and the block that comes down to clean up the pins after they are knocked down. I love those things. And even the ball returning via the gutter, it kind of doesn't make sense, but I like it. The fact that there's a gutter at all, I'm not sure if it was in the first game, but I like that. And, the score is really easy to read. You've got it on either side for both players, and it's all nice and good. So, yeah, for graphics, 3.25. Obviously, it's in black and white, and there's no real overlay over the actual game being played. So, I would love to see like a brown floor to you rolling the ball, but maybe they just couldn't do that yet. I'm not sure. At least they substituted it with good animation, so I'm always okay with that. For sound, I had to give it an NA because in the emulation there's no sound, and I couldn't find any videos of the original cabinet for this, so kind of sucks, but just NA. For gameplay, I gave it a 2.5 out of 10. It's fun, but it didn't really improve or change anything about the gameplay from what we've seen before. It's basically the exact same thing. This is really just a major graphics overhaul, and the changing of the perspective maybe changes the gameplay a little bit, but I don't know, it doesn't feel that much different, so it's still a good time though. I would say you get a full 10 frames when you put money into this machine, and that feels like a long game. You definitely get your money's worth, but it also kind of means that like after you're done, are you going to play another game? I don't think so. So it is what it is. And then for relevance, I give it a 7 out of 10. There's so many like little things that have never been done in a bowling game before that obviously you have to have them in a bowling game today, from perspective to the thing that cleans up the pins to actual gutters and animation for your guy when they walk around and get a strike and stuff. I mean, all of that, you need that in a game today, and this is the first game to do it. So I went a little high there. And that leaves me with overall a 2.75 out of 10. It's a pretty fun game. And it surprised me with how many little things it added that just gives it that character. So, and that's kind of what I wanted from a Meadows Games game. So
yeah, it's what we were missing from Meadows Lanes, because Meadows Lanes just like it played a round of bowling or whatever, a couple frames of bowling, but it didn't have any like soul to it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like when we see big improvements over the past couple of years in baseball games, they've been able to play baseball for a while, but just like looking good and giving you the feel of like, oh, this is baseball, not just dots on a field, makes a huge difference. So I can see how even just something as small as something collecting the pins and taking them off the lane. Like that's bowling. That's what your brain thinks when you think bowling. So seeing it on screen is just, that's awesome.
Yeah, so it's by far the best bowling game we've ever rated, I think, between, arcades, computers, and consoles. So it was a nice surprise for me because I was a little worried.
That's what Meadows Games has got to keep doing, though. They got to give us one like really good one and then one crappy one, because next time we get one from them, we'll be like, I don't know, and then we get real surprised again.
There's one or two coming out later this year that I know about that I'm really excited about. So it's not going to be the end of them anytime soon.
Oh, perfect.
And I'm happy about that. So yeah, that's it.
Well, next, let's get into my game. We're going to take a quick break from looking at arcade games to jump into a text adventure. And this is another Greg Hassett original.
I feel like that was close to being the Mac Oglesby classic.
It kind of was. It's the same vibe. And Greg Hassett, if you don't remember, made Journey to the Center of the Earth, which Ben played a couple of weeks ago. And this one, I didn't realize it at first, but Journey to the Center of the Earth, I knew it's another media property. I think it's a book that Greg Hassett loosely based the game off of. And this game is House of Seven Gables, which is also very loosely based off of The House of Seven Gables by Nathaniel Hawthorne. And since one of the things we know about Greg Hassett at this time is that he's like a teenager, I think he's 12 when he's making all these games. Mm-hmm. I got a feeling he's got some assigned school reading that he's getting a little creative with,
Right.
It really feels like he read this book and was like, apparently, I haven't read this Nathaniel Hawthorne book, but apparently it's a gothic romantic novel, but there's like light references and like allusions to witchcraft and spooky other stuff going on in there. But this is full-blown, basically a haunted house text adventure, just with the title House of Seven Gables. So several CRPG bloggers have said that this is a much more complete game than Journey to the Center of the Earth. I played through it a little bit, but I didn't get all the way through it, so I'm taking their word for it. And it makes sense that, if it's his second one out, it's still really impressive because he's 12. There's also several spelling errors throughout the game, but again, that's pretty forgivable, I think. They might have stuck around to when these were re-released through a publisher, which is a little less forgivable, but either way, there's some of those there. And as a couple people pointed out, the game doesn't really know what a gable is. The House of Seven Gables, gable, I looked it up because I vaguely know what it is, but I also didn't really know. It's the part of a wall that supports a pitched roof, just like a regular pointed roof. But a lot of the sections just refer to gables as if they are like rooms of a house in this haunted house, because you'll walk into it and it says you're in Gable 1. So that's also, I get that, especially if you're a high school kid and you're just like reading that and you're like, what is a gable? And you don't feel like asking. So you just make it up in your head as you read. It's very relatable. And another interesting note is that this is possibly, or maybe even probably, the first haunted house themed text adventure game.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know much about text adventure games, but from what some of the other bloggers who review a lot of these games have said, there's going to be a lot of them, a lot of haunted house themed text adventure games coming out after this. So he's kind of the
Don't
first
tell me
one
that.
out.
I'm probably going to have to do the next one.
Yeah, exactly. So write down your notes now, Ben. So let's get into the gameplay for this. It's a text adventure, so you kind of know what to expect. You start outside a house, there's a compass on the ground, and you have to pick up the compass to prompt for any directional movement. So it's a little weird, you don't just start with it in your inventory, but I guess it does prompt you to learn how to make, like, get commands. Although notably this uses get, but does not use take for grabbing items. Which, man, why couldn't you just use both? But either way, you go to the door of this house, door's locked, you ring the doorbell, and you are sucked inside the door, and then the door disappears. And you're trapped inside with not really much of a prompt of what's going on, other than that basically you have to find a way out. Later, you find a note that says, from a witch that says that you can't escape unless you defeat her. So that kind of gives you your main goal. But like many other text adventure games, and specifically like Journey to the Center of the Earth, you can also collect treasures and deposit them in the living room. In this case, I think it was back at your ship in the other game, to get points for it. Weirdly enough, the game doesn't tell you that.
It didn't tell you that before.
Right, yeah. So, I mean, if I went into this completely blind without the help of the other reviews that I read, I'm not good at these games anyway, so I think I would have just been like lost. or I would have just played through it and not got any points, which is also fine, because you can beat this game by beating the witch and getting out of the house without collecting any treasures, and then you just like beat it, but you get 0 points, which is sort of winning. I don't know. But throughout, there's several puzzles to solve, as well as a ghost and a ghoul that can appear. The ghost will kill you in a couple turns if you don't give it treasure. It keeps asking you for treasure. And the ghoul will kill you if you don't solve the puzzle to find out how to kill it. Which, again, I read beforehand. I wasn't too worried about spoiling myself on this. It does seem like you would have to die to it a couple times to figure it out. There is a specific trigger for what makes it spawn, but it is not evident, and only I think somebody who looked through the code of the game was able to figure out why it shows up. And to be honest, I forget why it does. But so there's a couple times of you just kind of wandering through, and it's not even a fight. It just straight up kills you. You have to start over, which kind of sucks. But after you beat the witch, you exit through the living room. A new exit shows up there, and the game actually gives you this nice little ending screen where it tells you how many points you got, what the maximum possible amount of points was, and how many turns you took to get that. So I wanted to give just a couple little shout outs for how it went for me in the, I think, 2 run-throughs I gave it before I was like, oh boy, I'm not good at these. The ghoul kills you right away if you don't have the right stuff. So if you don't know what the trigger is, like I forgot when I was playing, you really got to sort of rush before you find anything else to find the chemicals that you need to kill it. Or else, you know, any step you take, any room you enter, he could just pop out and you're done. There's also a maze in here, which apparently is a big trope of all of these text adventure games, to have a sort of maze where the description for every room is the same and you have to just kind of figure out by which directions you can move. But this doesn't tell you like a prompt if you walk into a wall, which is really weird. And I don't know if that's the whole point of it, but the same directional options just show up on the screen and you're supposed to kind of figure out, oh, I guess I didn't move at all, which was not very helpful to me unless it moves in like an infinite direction with lots of options and I just didn't go far enough. But it was very confusing. The first room in the maze has an axe, so I just figured, okay, I'll just get that and leave without going into the maze, although I'm sure there's a puzzle that you solve at the end of it. And first run that I did, found the axe, ghoul popped out. Axe doesn't kill ghoul. Good to know. And there's another just neat feature that I read about when I was looking into this, where when you pick up the compass at the beginning of the game, it's specifically called the shiny compass, but after 50 turns have passed, it is in your inventory as the tarnished compass, which who knows why it becomes dirty that quick, but it's kind of neat that it sort of like degrades over time. That's just like this weird little feature. So I thought that was neat. But now getting into my ratings for it, graphics, I'm not as generous as Ben, even though it has some nice world building and descriptions, 0 out of 10. There's no like ASCII graphics or anything like that. I think Ben got away with giving a text adventure game a 0.5, but I don't know. And then for sounds, I gave it a 0 out of 10. Again, no sounds in this text adventure game. For gameplay though, I gave it a 2 out of 10. Maybe it's because this game's easier and I'm not super good at this genre, but I really did like it more because it felt a lot more playable and fun to solve. There's a few in-game hints, but they're not always in the same room as the puzzle, so you kind of just have to like get all these hints out of context and then say, oh, that must have been referencing this. But it's not so alien and weird that it feels unsolvable, which is nice. The ghoul and the ghost appearing do seem really annoying though, and unless I didn't really explore enough, which is possible, it doesn't seem like there's many clues on why they show up or how to beat them. That's probably the point. You're probably supposed to figure it out yourself, but it does seem like it just randomly pops up, and if you're stuck on it and you never figure it out, you're just constantly restarting runs and never making any progress. There also isn't any prompt to place treasures, like I said, which sucks a little, but if you play a lot of these games, you probably would know that there's something like that going on. But as far as any indication of what the objective is, you do walk into a room that says, and I quote, "You can't escape until you kill me from Witchy Poo," which is very weird. But again, 12-year-old who's coding this, so a lot of the structure of the game is still very impressive. But it at least gives you some direction, which I liked. You have a goal, I have to kill the witch, which a lot of these text adventures just seem really aimless. But it was the same way with Journey to the Center of the Earth, I guess, where it's like you got to repair your ship. So you have something to do, which I really like in this. And I didn't really get far enough to notice, but as I was saying earlier, a lot of other people who played through this said it's much more complete. Everything that you find, it seems like there is a puzzle that it can be used to solve, whether optional or not. Instead of, I think in Journey to the Center of the Earth, there was a ton of things that were either just unfinished or purposeful red herrings of like, you found a sword. The sword doesn't do anything, you know?
Yep.
And so for relevance, I gave it a 6 out of 10, mainly just because the fact that Greg Hass is pumping out these games when he's only 12 is really cool. I mean, it's pretty impressive, even if the theming and everything is a little weird at times and not consistent. And also the fact that it's one of the first haunted house, I think it is the first, I should be definitive about that, the first haunted house themed text adventure, which apparently we're going to be seeing more, and Ben's going to be playing all of them. So it's relevant from that perspective. And so overall, I gave it a 1.5 out of 10. I'm not a huge fan of playing text adventure games. I do like the theming and sort of the whole process of them. But House of Seven Gables is much more approachable and easy to get into than something like The Cottage. Part of that being because of the language barrier, I'm sure. But there's still a lot of unexplained elements that I think could have been explained, and it wouldn't take away too much from the gameplay experience. But still, overall, it's a nice, compact set of puzzles to solve with this sort of weird, spooky, cool environment that you're in.
Nice. I think it's interesting that I think this is the first time we've played a text adventure that, like, the guy has already done one. You know what I mean? I think every other text adventure we've done has been a one-off.
Yeah, and he's, improving as he goes.
That's good. That's a good sign, because there's a couple coming up. All right, nice. Let's move on. We got another arcade game that I reviewed here, and then we're going to get some honorable mentions, and then we're going to call it a day. This next one's called Claybuster by Model Racing. And if you guys aren't familiar with Model Racing, they have been around for some amount of time. They mostly do clones that we don't cover, but this one is an original, and it is what it says it is. It's a clay busting game. It's a light gun game. There's clay pigeons that get launched from the sides, and you're just shooting them down. Kind of simple. Again, I went into it thinking, oh, this is going to be kind of a bad game, but it wasn't a terrible game. It's interesting, we'll say. So let me do the gameplay first. That's the easy part. It really is just like 2 clay pigeons get launched at a time. They do have perspective, so they start out kind of small, I guess, because they're coming from the bottom of the screen, and then when they're kind of at the highest point of their arc, they're the biggest, and then as they fall, they get smaller again. So there's perspective with them. They are just kind of balls. There's a little bit of actually there's a decent bit of detail to them. So they have like a frisbee appearance to them, which is weird for me to say. Like, I don't know why I say that, but that's kind of what they look like.
Yeah, I think that's what clay pigeons actually look like. So that sort of makes sense.
Yeah, so they're done pretty well. They look pretty good. And, when you hit them, they have a pretty nice explosion. And that's all it is. They shoot 2 at a time. You've got 4 or 5 bullets that you can shoot at them with. It is a light gun game. So it depends how good of a shot you are, if you can do it or not. And they always come two at a time, and then after maybe 10 rounds or something, it's the end of the game, which 10 rounds happens pretty fast. So it's a pretty fast game. So definitely a money eater. But it's okay. Like that part's it's pretty normal. It's pretty just kind of one dimensional, but it's an okay light gun game. The clay things do come out of the screens kind of at different angles, so they won't go up as high every time, and sometimes they'll be a little bit more angled, and sometimes they'll go more in a straight line. So you never quite know where they're going to go, and sometimes they even launch together, and you have to kind of get both of them, before they both hit the ground, or sometimes it's one and then the other. So there's some variation there, but it's pretty much just shooting clay pigeons, right? But here's the thing about the game that is really cool, and that's the graphics of it, which I didn't think would be the case because it's a black and white game. But on the flyer, because this part isn't emulated in MAME yet, but the flyer is very clear, has a very clear picture of the overlay of this game. And some of the questions I had about what am I looking at on the screen, it makes sense with the overlay and it looks really good. So in the game, at the bottom of the screen is basically, it looks like white noise, kind of like if you like flip the channel on an old TV and there wasn't like anything on that channel, it's just gray static kind of looking.
Right. Yeah.
It's that at the bottom of the screen, and I thought, I don't know what that's supposed to be, grass or something. But when you put it with the overlay, there's a blue overlay and there's actually a ship on that part. So it actually looks like sparkling water. And the picture on the flyer is really nice. It looks like really nice sparkling water, like as if you're shooting these clay pigeons over a sunset. And to me, that's like awesome looking.
Yeah.
There's also two boxes on the screen that are just white boxes, but they're actually like little sheds on the overlay that then are backlit because of the light there. So it actually looks really good. You've got the actual overlay, which is mainly just a light blue kind of overlay, especially over the ocean part. And then you actually have a kind of cutout, like we've seen in some other light gun games, of trees and kind of like a fence in a field. So it's kind of like you're shooting this on a field that's overlooking the ocean with a boat on it. And the ocean's actually sparkling. So it's pretty cool. I was really impressed with how the overlay put everything together. I wish we could see that in MAME, but it's really cool. I think there's a hand painted background part of it as well. So like the little sheds are like, I don't know if they are an overlay or if they're hand painted. It's definitely a high quality overlay if it's an overlay, but it's really nice. It kind of combines a bunch of stuff that we've seen before to make a really nice setting where you're shooting these clay pigeons. So getting into my ratings for gameplay, I gave it a 2.5 out of 10. I think it was pretty fun. Like I'm always kind of a fan of light gun games, and they can get tiring at times, but I think the whole atmosphere of the cabinet just kind of has this kind of calming, peaceful feeling where you're just shooting these clay pigeons over the sunset or something. And it's definitely one where the gameplay is so fast where I could see myself putting in multiple quarters and playing it. So I always think that's a good sign. For graphics, this is the big one for me. I give it a 3.5 out of 10. I think it looks really good with everything there. There's like cardboard cutouts, there's overlay, there's hand painted background stuff, and there's sparkling water that I've never really seen before. But when you put everything together, it just makes a lot of sense and looks great. So I really enjoyed it. Sound, I had to give it an NA again. There's no sound emulated, and there's no video of the cabinet. So all my sounds today are NA. And then relevance, I wanted to give it a little bit, but I don't know. It's just shooting clay pigeons out of the sky, and it's model racing. So I know that the sales probably weren't as large as like an Atari game or a Taito game. And it is, it's hard to find stuff about this. If there wasn't a really nice picture like there is in the flyer, then I wouldn't know what this looked like. And I'd just be like, why is this white noise at the bottom of the screen?
Right, yeah.
So I gave it a 5 out of 10. I thought it's like, it's nice. It's the first clay pigeon light gun game that I'm aware of. Although I'm sure there were electromechanical light gun games using projectors that did this, but the first one that's truly digital and a video game. So I gave it a 5 out of 10, just kind of left it in the middle. And then overall, I gave it a 3 out of 10. It was actually pretty enjoyable. The clay pigeons look good. The explosions look good. The ammo counter at the top actually is like bullet shell casings instead of just like a number.
Nice.
It is a one-player game that it has a high score, but like there's only one gun on the cabinet. So I guess if you're playing with other people, you have to take turns. But it's a nice little light gun game that I enjoyed. It did some interesting things that I wasn't expecting, and that's always a good sign.
Nice. That sounds cool. Sometimes that's the best way when we go into it, when we're like, I have no idea what this is, and it sounds meh. And then you're like, oh, look, it actually looks really good.
Yeah. Thank goodness I looked at the flyer, because otherwise it would have been like, this looks terrible.
Right, exactly. Nothing makes sense. All right. Well, then let's move on to our slew of honorable mentions to close us out here. We got Crazy Balls by EGS, which is some sort of Pong pinball hybrid game from Italy, but we don't have too much info on it other than that. And then Super Wumpus by Jack Emmerichs, which is an independent book that was published in Byte magazine that had Super Wumpus in it. I imagine it's just a slightly amped up version of Hunt the Wumpus, maybe with even more super bats.
Yep. And then after that, we've got Dr. Dobbs' Journal, Volume 3. Dr. Dobbs' Journal is another magazine that will come out all year long. It's got an issue every month, but every year it's collected in a single volume that has all the issues in that year. So I'm just going to cover that to make it easy on us. I looked through the whole volume, and there's some like okay games, or I don't know, there's some like games that aren't really good, but the ones that really stood out, there's Chase for the Krememco Dazzler, which is interesting to me because the Dazzler is just a really weird computer graphic thing. So having a robot chase game on there is a little cool, I guess. Definitely would like to see it, but we only had code for that. I didn't have any pictures of it. And then there's another one called the Oznaki Life, which is, I'm assuming, just another life game. And then one of the most interesting things to me about it is that there was an 8080 emulator for 6800 Motorola chips, which I was really interested in. I was like, wow, people are making emulators back in 1978.
Yeah, that's strange. But I mean, it kind of makes sense, I guess. There's a need for people to be like, hey, I don't have this, but I want to play this. So, And then next up, we have the Math Magician by APF, which is basically a calculator. We've seen dates ranging from 77 to 80 for this, but it seems that 78 is probably right for it. But it's basically a handheld that played math games and other text-based games like Lunar Lander, but it did also use overlays, which is kind of unusual and cool for a calculator game thing. And it's worth looking up the image of it because it's just kind of this guy with a wand and a bunch of plus signs and division signs coming out of it.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Sticking with handhelds for a second, this next honorable mention is called Touch Me by Atari. I believe it's their first handheld that Atari ever makes. And for whatever reason, it's of their like 1973 game Touch Me or something, which was a Simon Says type game. So I guess it's okay. I don't know. Seems weird.
And then last for today, we have Super High Res Chess by Bruce Tognazzini, which is a joke game that was not chess, actually, but instead you would try to run super high res chess and it would lock up your system with syntax errors until a certain code was typed in. In the days before like viruses and malicious attacks, this was just a very annoying way to mess with people. Later in an interview with Bruce, he talked about another one called Cattle Car Galactica, which was kind of banking off of Battlestar Galactica, but apparently did a very similar thing, or maybe was the same program sold under a new title to fool more people just by locking up their computer again. And I forget what the code was that you had to type to get it to unlock, but it was something real silly, and it was like something completely out there. It's very strange, but really funny.
Yeah. And that'll do it for us today, guys. We talked about some Atari 2600 titles like Space War, which I don't know. I feel like we've been hyping up the 2600. Maybe the Astrocade really is the king now. Well, we'll just have to wait and see.
Oof, yeah.
But we did that. We did 3D bowling, which was actually a really nice graphical overhaul of Meadows Lanes by Meadows Games. Wes did the House of Seven Gables, Greg Hassett's second text-based RPG. He's all about it. And then I did Claybuster by Model Racing, which was actually a pretty good light gun game. Even though it was in black and white, it had a lot of extras that made it have that kind of nice touch and feel to it. So, yeah, it was pretty cool.
Nice. And as always, make sure to follow us on Twitter. We'll post updates there if we're having any delays or any special announcement about episodes we have going up. Check out our website. Ben has just updated it with, I think, all of the previous Atari 2600 games that we have covered.
Yeah. Also on there, some of the new ones I added were our favorite games of the year. Superbug and Circus is on there now. Laguna Racer. It's a bunch of new ones, so go check it out.
Yeah, so you can see all the stuff that we're hyped up about. And lastly, make sure to send us an email if you have any questions.
And with that, we'll see you in the next one.
See y'all next time.